Alex Harper sent one final chilling text, then vanished without a trace. 5 years later, investigators uncovered a burnt-down barn, a hidden bunker, and a series of videos that revealed a terrifying truth he had tried to outrun. Someone, or something, had been hunting him all along. It was a quiet Sunday night in November 2016 when Alex Harper disappeared without a trace. The 24-year-old IT technician lived a simple life in Fairhaven, Vermont, a small town surrounded by forest and farmland. He wasn't the kind of person who made headlines. He went to work, came home, watched old sci-fi movies, and played video games. But at exactly 9:37 p.m. on November 13th, Alex sent a single text message to his roommate that would later haunt investigators and his family for years. It said, "I think someone's following me. If anything happens, check the red barn." First, no one took the message too seriously. His roommate assumed it was a weird joke or maybe part of a story Alex was working on. But when Alex didn't come home that night and his phone kept going straight to voicemail, worry began to set in. By morning, he was officially reported missing. Police traced the location of his phone and found that it had last pinged near a remote back road leading out of town, a place with no houses, no businesses, just woods and farmland. Hours later, they located Alex's car parked along that road, abandoned, doors locked, and keys still in the ignition. Inside were his wallet, backpack, and laptop, but no sign of Alex. The discovery deepened the mystery. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, and no tire tracks nearby. It was as if Alex had simply stepped out of the car and vanished into thin air. Search teams combed the nearby woods and fields for days, even using dogs and drones, but turned up nothing. The area was vast and isolated, but even then, someone leaving on foot should have left some kind of trace. But there was nothing. Just his cryptic message and an empty car on a forgotten road. The most puzzling part was the mention of a red barn. Fairhaven had once been a farming town, and red barns were not uncommon in its past. But by 2016, most had been torn down or repainted. Police canvassed the area, looking for any red barn that might be connected to Alex's disappearance, but came up with nothing. No barn matching the description was located near the place his car had been found. It was as if the barn didn't exist, or had existed long ago. Alex's family was devastated. He had no known enemies, no history of mental illness, and no reason to run. He was supposed to visit his parents for Thanksgiving just 2 weeks later, and had even ordered a new jacket online that was still waiting in the mail. Everything about his disappearance seemed sudden and unplanned. Yet, that final text, short, strange, and urgent, suggested otherwise. Someone might have been watching him, or maybe he had been watching someone else. Whatever happened that night on the quiet road outside Fairhaven, Alex Harper was gone. And with him went the truth. As investigators dug deeper into Alex Harper's life, they began to realize that the quiet, predictable routine he presented to the world may have hidden deeper currents. On the surface, Alex was stable and unremarkable. He worked at a local IT support center, paid his rent on time, and rarely made waves. But when detectives spoke with people who knew him, friends, co-workers, even neighbors, they heard the same word repeated over and over: distant. It turned out that in the months leading up to his disappearance, Alex had started to behave oddly. He had quit his job without giving much notice, something completely out of character for someone who'd been praised for his reliability. Co-workers said that in his last few weeks, he had become jumpy and withdrawn. He avoided conversations, stopped joining group lunches, and had even begun covering the camera on his work laptop with a strip of tape. What disturbed investigators more was what they found in his digital footprint. Alex had been spending long hours online, visiting obscure message boards, encrypted chat rooms, and parts of the dark web, usually frequented by people paranoid about surveillance or involved in conspiracy forums. His search history revealed that he had been reading about privacy tools, government tracking, and even online guides about how to disappear without a trace. One particular search, found just a week before he vanished, stood out. How to know if you're being followed without being obvious. Then came the most surprising discovery. Alex had recently rented a storage unit 15 miles away in a different county under a false name. When police obtained a warrant and searched the unit, what they found raised even more questions. There was a backpack packed with clothes, protein bars, a burner phone still in its box, a flashlight, batteries, a camping stove, and several maps of Vermont's national parks. It looked like a bug-out kit, something someone might prepare if they were planning to vanish intentionally or go off-grid. Why would someone like Alex, who had no criminal record or history of trouble, prepare to disappear? There was no evidence he was running from law enforcement or involved in any illegal activities. There were no financial issues, no debts, no secret life uncovered through bank statements or online transactions. It was as if he had been preparing for something or someone. Family members recalled that in the weeks before he went missing, Alex had started locking his bedroom door even when he was home and had installed a cheap motion sensor outside his apartment window. He had stopped riding his bike around town and had begun taking the long way home whenever he walked. His roommate admitted that Alex once asked him if he'd noticed any strange cars parked nearby, but he had brushed it off at the time. All of it painted a picture of someone who felt unsafe, but never said why. Someone who believed they were in danger, but left no clear explanation behind. And that left investigators chasing shadows. It wasn't until 5 years after Alex Harper vanished that something finally broke the silence. In the spring of 2021, a massive wildfire swept through the outskirts of Fairhaven, scorching acres of forest and abandoned farmland. Among the properties affected was a long-forgotten homestead that hadn't appeared on local maps for decades. As fire crews moved through the wreckage to prevent flare-ups, they came across the charred remains of an old barn. Faded red paint was still visible on the scorched wood, clinging in strips where the flames had spared it. For investigators who still remembered Alex's final text message, it was impossible to ignore the description. This was a red barn hidden deep in the woods, miles from any main road. The location hadn't been considered during the original search. The property had been in legal limbo for years after the previous owner, a man named Owen Strick, disappeared in the late 1990s. Strick had been known in town as a survivalist, a loner who spoke of government surveillance and lived almost entirely off the grid. Most people thought he had simply left or died in the wilderness, and the land he left behind had become overgrown and nearly impossible to reach without hiking on foot. When authorities began combing through the remains of the barn, they expected to find little more than ash and debris, but tucked beneath a layer of collapsed roofing and soot, they discovered a rusted metal hatch, padlocked shut. Fire had scorched the exterior, but the space below had been partially shielded. Once opened, it revealed a shallow basement, lined with concrete and outfitted like a makeshift bunker. There was a small mattress on the floor, a broken generator in the corner, and walls covered in torn maps, scribbled notes, and pages from old books. What disturbed investigators most was the discovery of a few personal items that clearly didn't belong to Strick. Among them was a water bottle with Alex Harper's fingerprints on it. DNA analysis of hair found in the bedding confirmed it. Alex had been there. But for how long and under what circumstances, no one could say. There were no signs of a struggle or blood, just signs of someone living or hiding there. Also found was a photograph, badly weathered but intact, showing Alex standing just outside the barn looking tired and thin. The photo had been taken after his disappearance, based on his appearance and the clothes he wore. That revelation changed the nature of the investigation. It meant that Alex hadn't vanished completely in 2016. He had somehow ended up in this hidden place, far from where anyone thought to look. The red barn wasn't just symbolic, it was real. It had been waiting in silence all those years, holding onto pieces of a puzzle no one had known was there. But the biggest mystery remained. If Alex had been there, where did he go next? The photo suggested he had been alive long after everyone assumed the worst. Yet again, Alex had disappeared without a trace, and now the questions had only multiplied. After the discovery of the red barn, the case of Alex Harper shifted from a cold missing persons file to an active investigation. Detectives re-examined every piece of evidence with fresh urgency, determined to understand how Alex had ended, up in that hidden bunker, and what had happened to him afterward. The image found in the basement, showing him alive and visibly older than when he disappeared, had shattered the long-standing belief that he had died shortly after sending his final message. Now, the new goal was not just to understand how he vanished, but where he might have gone next. A major breakthrough came months later, thanks to an anonymous tip. A woman from upstate New York came forward claiming that she had seen someone resembling Alex at a rural rest stop in the summer of 2018, 2 years after he vanished. According to her, the man had been traveling alone, wearing a gray hoodie and sunglasses. He kept his head down, paid in cash, and appeared anxious. What caught her attention was the way he limped slightly, as if favoring one leg. She remembered him because she'd noticed the way he avoided security cameras and left quickly as soon as she entered the building. At first, police were skeptical, but when they obtained security footage from the location, her account proved chillingly accurate. The man in the footage looked remarkably like Alex. Facial recognition software returned a high-probability match, and his build and gait were consistent with previous video evidence. It was him, or someone who looked nearly identical. The implications were staggering. If Alex had escaped the red barn, where had he gone? Why hadn't he contacted his family or gone to the police? Investigators began to consider a darker possibility, that Alex had been running from more than just an isolated captor. Maybe he hadn't been hiding in the barn. Maybe he had been imprisoned there, and when he finally escaped, he still wasn't safe. This theory gained strength when a former underground contact agreed to speak off the record. She had once been involved with a secretive network that helped people vanish, usually victims of stalkers, whistleblowers, or those fleeing dangerous organizations. She claimed that in late 2016, a man identifying himself as AH had reached out through one of their encrypted portals. He said he had seen something he shouldn't have while working IT, something involving shipment routes, private servers, and surveillance tags. He claimed he was being followed, not by one person, but by a group. She described him as paranoid, but rational. He didn't want to run away forever, just long enough to understand what he had gotten involved in and how to protect himself. Then, after 2 brief conversations, he vanished from the network's servers. His messages stopped. They never heard from him again. It seemed more and more likely that Alex hadn't just disappeared. He had gone underground, first by choice, then maybe by force, and finally out of necessity. The red barn had been one part of a longer escape plan, or possibly a trap. One thing was clear. Whatever he had seen back in 2016 had sent him on the run, and even years later, it still had the power to keep him in the shadows. In early 2023, a new cold case investigator named Lila Moreno joined the Fairhaven Police Department. She had a reputation for thoroughness, often revisiting long-forgotten evidence in hopes of finding something everyone else had missed. When she took on the Alex Harper case, her first instinct was to go back to the Red Barn files. Boxes of evidence, photos, logs, and electronic items had been collected after the fire 2 years earlier, but many of them had been logged hastily due to the condition of the site. One particular item caught her attention: a scorched, unlabeled USB drive that had been dismissed as damaged during initial reviews. Moreno sent it to a digital forensics lab. After several weeks of work, the tech team managed to retrieve several video files from the device. What they found was shocking. The videos appeared to be self-recorded by Alex, using a handheld camcorder, likely sometime between late 2016 and early 2018. The footage was dark and shaky, sometimes with poor audio, but it was unmistakably him. Gaunt, bearded, and visibly frightened, Alex spoke directly into the lens, whispering as though someone might hear him. In the first clip, he explained that he was hiding in the Red Barn, unsure who was after him, or how they had found him. He mentioned accessing a server during his time at the IT support center that contained encrypted files linked to surveillance operations, and something he only described as logistics data for unauthorized shipments. He didn't understand all of it, but he believed the files weren't meant to be on the network. After viewing them, he said strange things started happening. Cars parked outside his apartment for hours, his emails glitching, and unfamiliar faces appearing at his work. Another clip showed Alex pacing, visibly exhausted, as he described losing contact with the group that had promised to help him disappear. He spoke of hearing footsteps at night outside the barn and of drones flying overhead. His tone shifted between fear and resignation. In one of the final videos, he held up a crude map marked with red X's across various parts of Vermont and New Hampshire. He said he was planning to leave soon to head north where it's quieter, but it was the last clip that left investigators speechless. In it, Alex stared directly into the camera. His voice was quiet but calm. He said he didn't expect to be found, and that if anyone ever did see the videos, they should know he hadn't run to disappear from his life. He had run because he saw something and had nowhere else to turn. He ended the recording by mouthing the words, "I'm not dead. I just can't come back." To this day, no trace of Alex Harper has been found beyond that video. His body was never recovered, no further sightings confirmed, but the videos provided chilling evidence of a man who was hunted not by delusion, but possibly by a secret too dangerous to reveal. The truth about what he saw remains hidden, and so does he.